Hello and welcome to In the Making, a series of conversations from North Bennett Street School, where we connect with a range of new voices, fields, and perspectives. Before we get into our conversation, I want to recognize and thank the Dora Foundation for making this program possible. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Kristen Odle. I'm an NBSS staff member and host of In the Making. This evening's program is the last of the year as we head into the holiday break. So it is only fitting that we cap off this unprecedented year celebrating our alumni. These are the folks that make our work pure joy. So this evening we're joined by Willow Coronella, jewelry graduate from just this past month from 2020. Jonathan Oda, cabinet and furniture graduate, 2019. Nick Gerald, violin making and repair program from 2019. Greta Llanes, bookbinding graduate, 2019. Chris Laudolff, preservation carpentry graduate, 2019. And Emery Williams, carpentry graduate, 2020. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to see all your faces. It's been quite a while. So I'm just going to ask for our guests that are here watching this, I'm going to sort of ask some straightforward questions and go around to each alumni and they can give us their answers. And then we'll just keep navigating through that in a conversation. And then at the end, you can all ask them whatever questions you have. So my first sort of standard questions are, where are you originally from and what were you doing prior to North Bennett Street School? I'm going to start with Jonathan.
All right. I was born and raised in Worcester, Mass. I was a carpenter for probably 10 years, but right before I came to the school, I was a commercial superintendent for a commercial management company. So we're building supermarkets and restaurants and whatnot. It just, that kind of work gets old really fast. So
what were you doing prior to that?
I was running a business with my brother, a carpentry business. There's more residential, remodels, additions, pretty much anything interior, exterior portfolio. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I got tired of that too. So
you have a military background.
Yeah, I was in the Marines from 2001 to 2005.
Yeah.
So after getting out, it was pretty much, bounced around for a little bit, but I found carpentry and I really like working with my hands. So that's where I ended up. Yeah.
That's really evident though in your work. I know that you bring that military background and sort of those principles to your work. I know that it's like you talk about it,
Yeah, I try.
Yeah.
Something that's kind of ingrained in you,
Yeah, I bet.
Can't get away from it.
Yeah. How about Willow? Where are you from and what were you doing prior to coming to study jewelry making?
Yeah, so I grew up in southern Vermont in like the Brattleboro area. Prior to coming to North Bennett Street School in 2018, I was actually working for a luggage shipping company. I was working internationally, dealing with customs agents in a bunch of different countries, trying to get people their luggage on vacation. So I had that, and then prior to that, I was working in kitchens. So I worked as a line cook and a sous chef for quite a long time as well.
Mm-hmm. I remember we talked about this. One of our first In the Making conversations was with you, Willow, and we talked about the change from being in logistics, finding somebody's luggage to, actually using your fingers and your hands in the details of jewelry making.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was very clear to be working that job how much I really wanted to get back to working with my hands and how much I don't really enjoy having to be on the phone for, 8 to 10 hours a day, but really like making stuff instead.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to ask Emery the same question. Tell us where you're from and what were you doing prior to NBSS?
I'm originally from the shoreline of Connecticut, and sort of like Willow, I half of my 20s was like restaurant, kitchen, and waitressing. And then the other half, and what I was doing up until coming here, was doing test rating for like kindergarten, well, not kindergarten, first grade through high school. mostly English and social studies. But I've always, back in high school and throughout my life, I just always took as many art classes and did as many workshops, glass blowing, knife making. I was a potter's apprentice, and I just could not be on my computer anymore. And I just couldn't do it. And I was like, if I don't do this now, when am I going to do it? So when I was 30, I just started looking back into NBSS. My mom mentioned it back when I was looking at colleges the first time around. That was back in 2006 when it was like, oh, you do well in school, you go to college before the economic crash. And I just didn't really see another option, even though I wasn't that interested. So I'm glad I did it the second time around. Yep.
And have you felt that transformation, just, getting away from a computer, even though you are now a TA in the carpentry program, and
Yes.
Every time I think
and now I'm on a but it's good because it's actually I'm doing a lot of quizzes and still, but I'm starting a carpentry job in January, and even with doing work for this on the computer, it's just kind of reiterating things that I kind of knew during the school, but like once you're out of it, it kind of comes together more. So going back to things, techniques, terminology, but yeah, mental health, way better. Being able to work on something and come back the next day and it's how you left it. Sense of like accomplishment when you're done, and keep it moving instead of having this like constant to-do list in my mind and everything on a computer where it's like staring at me to start working and I can't do it.
That's such an interesting thing to hear, is coming back to something as you left it. I think that's what you just said. Explain that. How is that different?
Because, well, with restaurants are Groundhog's Day, but there is a sense of like when you're done, you're done. But with this, there's not this fluid to-do list that you get an email and you have to go back to something that you thought was closed, or you have to do edits on something you did a month ago, or you have 10 different things going on and emails, and it's just so much, but it's all on your laptop. And so when you're building something and you come back to it the next day, it's exactly how you left it. You know what you need to do for that day.
It's very straightforward.
It's straightforward, and it's just, you can zone in easily and you just start working, and it's not like this for me, like my brain of like procrastinating doesn't happen when I'm doing physically making something. I just get into it and I enjoy it rather than putting something off that has to happen and then more things add to the to-do list.
Got it. We'll come back to that in a second. I'm going to keep moving on. Nick, where are you from and what were you doing prior to North Bennett?
I'm originally from Greenville, South Carolina. And before North Bennett, I was a cellist. And I had been a cellist my whole life. That's all I ever did, from the time that I was pretty young.
Starting when?
I started when I was in the 3rd grade. So I guess I don't really know what age that is, but young enough. And so I had just been a musician my whole life, and it wasn't until I got to college, and when I was toward finishing college, that I was kind of realized that I was sort of on the wrong path for myself. And the point that you mentioned earlier, that you were discussing earlier, about leaving things and having them be the same when you return, definitely rings true for me as well. I think that's exactly what I was missing with being a performer, and exactly what I found with making instruments.
How would you relate that to being a performer, not is coming back to something as you left it? Like, how does that relate to being a musician?
For me, I think, for an amateur musician, I don't think it is really an issue, but for me as a performer and trying to be a professional, I found it very difficult the lack of tangibility in your progress. The fact that, I could practice hours and hours and then come back the next day and, my effort would seemingly be gone. Of course, we know that practice does improve your skills and abilities, and you see that with woodwork as well. But having evidence of it, for me, was very satisfying, and I think important for just, my psyche to be able to progress and move forward and get better.
Yeah, it's challenging as a musician. Like you don't have that sense of daily improvement because you can come back and maybe your fingers are sore. Everything's going to sound different every day.
Exactly.
So I get it.
And of course, you can see your progress over time as a musician, and that can be satisfying in itself. But I think for me personally, it wasn't enough in that line of work. And of course, I still enjoyed like playing and being involved with music, but I'm very happy that I have this outlet that allows me to be satisfied with the work that I do and get better and still be involved with the music without having that pressure of performing and practicing all the time.
That sense of improvement, one of the carpentry, Peter hit on this yesterday in the open house, which those of you who are with us, if you didn't watch the open house series the past 3 days, you can find them on our YouTube channel. That's just a little plug for the open house series because it was so great. But Peter made mention of one of their favorite moments in teaching is to watch a student find when something clicks, and it kind of that resonates with what you're saying a little bit, Nick, that you can see your progress. Like one day you can come in and your dovetail fits really well all of a sudden one day, or something just works. And
I remember that even from day one at North Bennett Street, walking in, and it felt like every single new thing that you were introduced to was just like, yes, all right, awesome, let's do that. It's a very exciting thing.
Let's talk to you, Chris. I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Let's see, I am from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and prior to North Bennett, I was studying at University of Madison. And not really enjoying my coursework, except for anything machine.
What was the coursework?
I was going for civil engineering, but I actually ended up leaving after just my freshman year. I had a couple introductory engineering classes, and just your basic chemistry, and that sort of thing. But I just really was not enjoying it. Except for anything machine or wood shop related. So I did a little research and found out about North Bennett Street. And in the meantime, I was working at a commercial jig and like a retail fixture shop, like sort of a pseudo cabinet shop. Like we'd make a lot of big production stuff for like Starbucks and Chipotle. And I had worked at a similar type of place prior to going to school. So pretty interesting to see how the processes of like a large scale type of carpentry shop, and then coming to North Bennett and seeing a lot of the smaller scale stuff.
We had another student that actually she's in preservation carpentry now in her second year, who used to do set design, for lack of a more specific term, for a big furniture company. And it sounds similar to what you're referring to, doing like large scale sort of mass production, run of the mill stuff. And so I can see the want to maybe get a little bit more into it.
Right. Yeah. It gets pretty mundane when you're making the same picture frame or pants display for.
Yeah. Pants display.
Yeah.
She was frustrated because at the end of as soon as they would build it, they would take photographs and rip it all down. So, she wanted to go the complete antithesis of that by saving things and through restoration.
Sure.
Yeah. Greta?
Hi.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. Anyway, I'm from Cuba. I migrated to the States when I was 13. And before North Bennett, I was in the world of fine art fabrication. I was a mold maker by trade, and I was working at a fine art foundry upstate New York. I was in the patina department when I first found out about North Bennett. I was trying to transition into conservation and preservation of artworks, but had no idea how to start, or didn't know anyone that was in the profession, didn't really know much about the field. So I felt like the best next step for me in order to bridge that gap was to continue in some sort of program where I could also learn another trade. And book was perfect for me because I really see it as an object that's in between 2D and 3D. It's not as, it basically is like a collection of different materials that they all behave differently as you move them together at the same time. So I also had done printmaking at Cooper Union, where I got my BFA from. So that was also a nice little connection that I had for choosing books.
Yeah, I mean, yours has this very natural, melding of all of these different things, pieces of you, that culminated into book and now are, what you're doing where you are now, which we'll get to in a second. I don't want to, speak too soon, but just the conservation, the books, coming from doing patina work on sculptures.
Yes, and mold making and
mold making,
casting and plaster. Basically, I was just working for sculpture studios in New York and doing a lot of art handling as well. So really just working really closely with artworks. And that's really where I get not so much like inspiration, but just like the feel of like wanting to make things myself as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Greta. Now we're going to jump to the question of what are you doing now after you've graduated? Most of you, everybody here is a recent grad, either 2019 or 2020, which in the case of 2020 was about a month ago that you graduated. So might not be a very easy question of what you're doing now, but tell us. And I'm just going to go back in the same rhythm, if you don't mind. So John, tell us what you're doing.
I opened a furniture shop with two other graduates. They graduated a semester behind me, Mike Turner and Jeff Woods. It's out in Leominster. We recently got Emily Goff to come into the shop and work with us too. So we're making everything from kitchens to doors and windows and tables. I mean, it's been really exciting to see where this came from, because the building we went into was an old it had been in Mike Turner's family for generations. And it was like a plastics factory at one point. It was a marina, and it was abandoned for probably 20 years before we got there. So there's a ton of work that needed to happen just to the building in order for us to move into the space. And it's still a huge work in progress. But like looking back at pictures we took when we first got there to where we are now, it's pretty cool to see this whole process go down. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
And is it already situated?
Kind of. I mean, getting there.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen.
There's everything that's come through has been through commissions or whatever we're doing for work. So there hasn't been like this big like lottery ticket that's been paying for it all. So as we all collect, we put aside a certain amount of money and then we'll buy something for the shop or we'll do some sort of upgrade. But we got a lot of work to go to make it actually legit, I guess would be the right way to say it. So
I think it's pretty legit. I mean, you all are you're taking jobs. You have your own business running out of there, and then the three of you work together on projects.
Yeah, everybody's kind of working well. I mean, the nice part about having, like, at first I thought it'd be kind of cool to work by myself, have my own shop somewhere, like in my basement, or like build a barn or whatever. But the one thing I enjoyed about the school the most was the people. Like you could bounce ideas off somebody. There was always like a good support network. And we kind of have that at the shop. There's four of us all together, and it's, somebody's slow, they might help you, or vice versa. If you got an idea, you can bounce it off people, and it's been they're really great people. So it's been a huge up for my life. Yeah.
Yeah, you all are a great story too, because you all, well, I guess Jeff and Mike were a semester before you or after you.
After me. Yeah.
Yeah, but the three of you
Emily,
just
Jeff, and Mike, yeah.
yeah, Emily's in their class too. But the three of you just were, bench to bench to bench like the whole time you were there. So you obviously fit into a groove right away.
Yeah. Well, that's it. They were talking about putting down a rubber roof on the shop. And I was like, oh, I put down rubber roofs before. And that was kind of like how it all started. I was like, yeah, I'll come and help you out. No problem. I mean, in my prior jobs, I did a lot of rubber. So I went out and helped them. And they're like, hey, you want to work on the shop with us? I was like, yeah. So,
yeah.
And then, And the funny thing is Jeff, we were both in the Marines at the same time. He was in a different unit than I was, but we were both, before we went to Iraq, we were stationed in Kuwait. And we were both in the same camp when General Mattis gave a speech. So that was like an instant, it's like, oh, you were there? I'm like, yeah, I was there. So
that's crazy.
It's kind of funny how that happened. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Willow, what are you up to right now?
Yeah, so I actually am working for a small independent shop over in Wellesley at the moment. The shop has actually had a lot of NBSS grads go through it at a certain point. It's been a really good jumping off point for jewelers specifically, because they're willing to take the time to get us acclimated to the business side of stuff, because we certainly have the bench skills for it. We just need to learn to speed up and deal with all of the paperwork and all of the admin that kind of comes along with it, which we don't normally have to do in school. So I got hired way back in March with the understanding that, I'd be graduating in May, and then of course shutdown happened. So that got put on hold. Once things opened back up again, I was able to come into the shop like a day a week while I was finishing up program requirements. And then as soon as I finished or I should say the first week of November, I was able to start going into the shop more. And now I kind of work there about 2 to 3 days a week, kind of doing pretty much everything at this point.
Everything that you learned in jewelry making program?
Not as much, actually. I would say more all the tasks that are needed in the shop itself. Recently, just because we had to we had to shut down everything for a while and then start back up again, we had to rearrange the number of people we could have in the shop at a time. So I've been taking a lot of time actually to reorganize the shop and to do equipment maintenance and such like that. Also make sure that we have all of our up-to-date paperwork on certain things, having SDS forms. We have a lot of chemicals and a lot of compounds and stuff. We need to know what's in the shop at a time, and having a good record of that was necessary to have, kind of fallen by the wayside. So kind of helping with all of that sort of task. And then once in a while being able to jump on the bench and actually make stuff. Finished up.
So you just mentioned that you're doing, there's a lot of paperwork involved, kind of like the back end stuff. Would you say that that's sort of what you need to absorb to go into the next phase of starting your own business, or, branching out? Is that like a natural step?
I think it's a natural step in terms of understanding the general jewelry industry. Because while we do learn a ton of stuff about the bench work, there's a lot of things such as understanding, regulations around a lot of what we do, because we work with such high value items and materials. There's a lot of regulation around that. There's a lot of regulation around making sure, of course, charging tax on things, making sure you understand how to record stuff. So if, a client says, hey, my stone fell out, is this your fault? Understanding the insurance claims that might come with that sort of thing. Because, you want to make sure that you've covered your backside and, make sure you have all the records straight and such, and understanding what information is important to keep around and what you can let go of.
Yeah.
So really, that's the next thing that we don't really have time for, I think, to learn as much in school.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you, Willow. Emery, what are you doing these days?
So right now I'm working 20 hours a week as a TA for the carpentry department. Mostly kind of preparing for if the school goes into lockdown again or the state closes schools. So just getting a lot of content, quizzes, YouTube
Building out the
tutorials
online,
onto
building out
Google Classroom.
stuff, yeah.
And again, even though I do hate the computer, and it is nice to go in and as someone who had started without any real knowledge of carpentry, like I remember the things that I really just couldn't get a hang of at first, or a lot of just like it's like learning a new language, and some of it is like Peterisms, that are just, you're like, what is that, like a real term, or are you just saying a word? So just kind of I basically am learning again, or learning more, and also just becoming more and more comfortable with a lot of things where it's like it just comes together. It's like, I don't know, like reading a long book with a lot of characters, you start panicking in the beginning, you're like, wait, let me go back to that page that has a lot of the people, and then like just calm down, it will all come together. And so I feel like this is kind of nice where it's all come together slowly over the months, and this is kind of, I don't know, it's made me realize I've learned a lot more, like, than I thought I did.
Yeah.
And then in January, I'm starting 3 days a week at Columbia contracting as a carpenter, which I'm excited about. So then I'll be able to actually be doing hands-on work, but also still working for the school until the end of the year.
And that's a local company.
Yeah, they do mostly interior, but they do some exterior work in the greater Boston area, residential. And they do hire NBSS people. And I think the school's really great at connecting you. I definitely have a lot of anxiety when it comes to like starting something new. But then when coming here, it's like, or coming to the school, it's like everyone wants to be there. Everyone's so nice, like students, teachers, and faculty. And it's just like, they're all there to help you. And so looking at jobs through, like, I don't feel like I would have been confident or comfortable being like a female in carpentry, trying to just join a crew and be like, can I learn? So even with this, my priority is just to keep learning as much as possible. And I can hang with whoever. I get along with most people, and like I can deal with, like I've worked in restaurants. I can deal with like the kitchen talk and whatever. I just want people who are like helping you learn and like then let you alone, but like just know that you're still learning. And so looking for jobs gave me the confidence of like, I'm going to ask for that. Like when I go in and interview for places, like I don't want to just be like, oh, take any job. I want to make sure that it's something where they know that you're a student, they know that you went to North Venice, you want to be there, but that you're willing to work hard if they're willing to teach. And they like seem really great, and that they are going to help me learn as much as possible. So I'm excited.
That's cool.
How it goes.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Chris, where are you? Where are you actually? Are you out west? Or no, you're in Wisconsin.
Yes, I am back in Wisconsin. My girlfriend and I bought a house earlier this summer.
Congratulations.
Just outside of Madison. It's about a 120-year-old schoolhouse.
Wow.
So it's needed quite a bit of work, and it's seen some pretty bad work in the past. So, but yeah, I'm self-employed as a contractor.
Specifically on preservation?
Mostly modern carpentry, I would say. Occasionally, a little bit of preservation work came by, and I'd like to keep moving towards that. But right now, the bread and butter is doing modern new build construction and remodels.
Great.
yeah, mostly work with a small crew of 2 other guys. We do frame to finish.
What's the
Everything.
name of your business?
CR Laudolff Carpentry.
Nice.
Yep.
All right.
And you can find me on my website at that name. So.
Okay, we will. Thank you. Nick, tell us where you are or what you're doing now.
Hi.
Hi.
So I work in New York. I work at a company called Rare Violins of New York. It's an instrument dealership and repair shop as well. So I'm an instrument technician. I'm a restorer, and I've been here since I graduated North Bennett Street. So it's been about 2.5 years. I actually started work here about 3 days after graduation. So it was a quick move from Boston to New York, and then immediately hit the ground running.
Wasn't that did you how far before when did you know that you were that you were hired for that? I mean, it was while you were in the program, right?
I did a few bench tests at some different shops, and well, we had one other shop, and also with just an independent violin maker who was looking for an apprentice. So it's common, that we would do bench tests in this field for about a week at a time, just to see how you work with other people and everything. So I did these trials while I was in my last semester, basically at North Bennett Street, and I feel super privileged and lucky to have gotten this job because this shop allows me so much access to really the best instruments in the entire world. It's amazing, the kind of things that you get to see and you get to work on. And it does a lot for your own work as well. It's not just a responsibility of like, oh, I have to take care of this 350-year-old cello, but also I can look at that whenever I want and I can make that myself, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. And you're right in Manhattan, right?
Yes, this shop is in Midtown, at 57th Street. So it's pretty nice area to get to work in, and we get to cater to a lot of really high level players and clients, and that's always very rewarding, just to have a lot of nice instruments around.
Did you ever think when you were a young cellist that when you're a young musician, you're like, I'm going to be famous and symphonic and a soloist? Did you ever think that you would be working as a very specific violin restorer in the middle of Manhattan?
I had no idea, but it is, in hindsight, of course, it seems ironic in a way, because I remember some of my favorite musicians as a kid knowing which instruments they played, and now I've actually worked on those instruments.
That's crazy.
So it couldn't have worked out better for me, honestly, in that regard, at least. Have some childhood dreams fulfilled in a way that I never would have expected.
That's great. I mean, I'm hearing quite a few of those things. Like Chris, you just bought an old schoolhouse. I mean, that sounds sort of like maybe it was a bit of a childhood dream, and there you are.
I wouldn't say that. Maybe an old Victorian, but
okay.
I don't know. After happy to take what I can get around here,
Yeah. Greta, tell us what you're doing these days.
So I am currently the conservation technician at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. So I am the technician for the objects and paintings lab and the textiles lab as well. So I've gotten very good at multitasking. I'm currently working on 3 different objects from the collection. One is a 16th century velvet from Italy, a fragment of piece of velvet that I'm remounting it basically. So I'm not treating the actual textile, but I'm doing, like my fiber identification by microscopy. So trying to identify all the materials that were used, in order to actually like get closer to dating and making sure that what I'm doing to it won't affect any of the materials. And it's actually really cool because there's basically, it's mostly silk, but there's a lot of metal threads with a silk core, and those are really special. So I've been learning a lot about the history of how they're manufactured, and also how they're manufactured in the modern world now. So that's been fun. The second object is a silver Norwegian cup from the 17th century. And it was super, super dirty. It was very special because Isabella herself used to put fresh flowers on there in front of a painting that her husband loved. So it's part of my duties now to also keep fresh flowers on that beaker. So it was really special to have that as my first project. So I cleaned it, polished it. I'm coating it now and to protect it, and it should be back on view in a couple of weeks. And then my last object is a Polychrome Column from France from the 18th century. And that's going to be fun because I've actually never really worked with wood, especially really old wood that's been painted and lacquered and has bug holes and cracks and the works. So I'm really excited about that one. I still don't really know what. I just have to do a lot of research now and look into what other people have done in the past, and get as much information as I can before I propose a treatment. And then it gets approved, and then I get to work. So
that's so cool. The vase thing, I mean, you're a part of the history of the museum just by keeping
attending
flowers,
to it.
Yeah, attending to it.
Yes. And actually, pretty sadly, we had to, all museums in Boston had to close for 3 weeks, starting yesterday, actually. And there was this gorgeous installation of flowers in the courtyard that gets rotated. And I got to take some home, which you can see behind here.
Nice.
Yeah, they do a great job at making the courtyard and the horticulture team part of the collection, and really just gives it life for, everyone that visits.
Can I ask Greta one question?
Please.
What you do seems so interesting and cool. I just wanted to know a little bit more about that process of how you do your research and what the committee is, or who it is that you propose to, and then what's the first step. Like, how do you feel when you're like making that first whatever it is on an object, just emotions wise?
It feels crazy. You always feel like you're going to do the wrong thing, even though you know what you're doing, or that you're doing something that someone it's teaching you to do. It's kind of like, I can give you an exact example. Actually, I was polishing that beaker, the Norwegian beaker that I was talking about, but there are parts of it that are gilded, and you don't polish the gilded parts because you remove the gold if you polish that part. So while I was cleaning it, I saw yellow coming off, and I thought, which is impossible. You can't just remove gold by just cleaning it. But of course, it was the first object that I had, and it was my first project and the first thing that I was touching. So I freaked out. It was really just dirt. And it's sort of like, that's like the feeling that you get every time when it's, something that's really old or really important, that you're like intruding in it, and changing the material, even at the micro level. But to answer your first question, so you propose a treatment for the curator. So the curators are the ones that sort of decide what, based on the budget and what needs to happen, how much work you put into an object, basically. So if they tell you can do anything, you have all the time that you need, and you can do as many, as much as you want to do, then that's sort of like a different, that's kind of rare, to be honest. Usually you're just given like a certain amount of time or a certain specific things to fix, and then you kind of have to like make it all work. But the research that you do is based on basically what other conservators have done in the past. But you also you read a lot of art history, pieces and stuff. So yeah, it's a lot. You read more than what you actually end up using, but that's always like a good thing in my opinion.
Thank you. My last question before we open up for other questions. Does any, sorry, I'm just watching this attendancy. What is a lasting memory of your time at North Bennett Street School? And I already proposed this as, it can be a personal experience, a moment with your craft, a moment with your trade, something with an instructor, whatever it is. And maybe you all have had time to think about this, or just be spontaneous. John?
I gotta say, all right.
No.
No, there's so many things that I remember about the school that I really enjoyed. I can't really narrow it down to one specific. I think if I would have to, like Emery said, everybody there is just so nice. It's like I went from the Marine Corps infantry basically straight into the trades. So it was like everybody in those, those trades and those professions are always miserable. Like they're just grumpy, for whatever reason. I mean, whatever. But I got to the school and everyone's like, "Hey, how are you? Hey, if you need anything," I'm like, "Wow." I thought they were like pumping something into the air. That's how nice everybody was. So, the more and more I got into it, the more I realized it's because everyone really wanted to be there. And it wasn't, whether that was, a specific passion that brought them there, but I think it all evolves around creativity. So, when you're around a creative group of people, it's changed the dynamic on which I see like my everyday life. Because before I was kind of on guard. But I'd say that's probably my lasting experience, was just the people that go to that school, from students to faculty. It was a pretty awesome experience for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really great. Do you think that that's something that you've been able to carry out beyond North Bennett into your daily practice now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's another thing about having shopmates. If I was by myself, I don't know if I would have been able to handle everything as well. So like having them there, everybody there is positive, everybody there is creative. It's not like you ask someone a question, it's not shut off or closed or just go get it done. They'll sit down, we all sit with each other and we'll go over different processes and maybe, different things that can accomplish the task better. So I definitely have carried it on into even my personal life. So it's been a long road, and now things are doing really well, and I'm very grateful. So I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. We're happy that you're here.
Yeah. Me too.
Willow, what about you?
Right. Yeah, I mean, my memories are somewhat recent, but it's amazing how quickly they fly out of your head too.
But also, jewelry making program is a long program, so you have a long span to pull from.
Yeah, that is true. 2 years is 2+ years at this point, I guess. It's quite a lot of stuff happens over 2 years and 50 projects plus. I think some things that always kind of keep poking me in the head again, now that I'm kind of off on my own to some degree, is kind of the Annisms. The things that Anne has said to us. Anne's our instructor.
Yes.
Who she says that she has very specific terms for certain things, and a lot of them kind of come back to me and just make me giggle a little bit at weird times. Every time, I'm like trying to rush on doing something, and I'm like, I know this might go wrong if I don't, secure it properly. I just can hear her just going belts and suspenders. To try to.
What does that mean?
Belt and suspenders is her way of saying, do everything you can to make sure this will go as right as possible. So, if you're soldering a ring, you want to make sure that it's secured in several different directions. So when it, the flux or whatever bubbles and the whole thing shifts, you have something else securing it to keep it from going the wrong direction. And then you have something permanently soldered that you can't get unstuck, or you've melted something. The idea.
I get it.
Yeah.
Suspenders are precautionary, just
suspenders and the belts that should keep everything in place, hopefully. So stuff like that. And then 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. There's many different ways to do things. If you're trying to do something one way and it just isn't working, try another way. It'll probably get you to the same result. So like those kinds of sayings keep popping back up in my head. While at school, just the amount of focus that I had around me and the people who I had around me who were equally focused as I was to accomplish goals. That was another thing that really kind of impressed me about being there, is that people want to be there, which is the same thing, Jonathan said. And I think that kind of drove me as well to keep pushing myself and to keep looking for what else I can improve on. So that's something that's definitely stuck with me.
That's great. It's something that's been in conversation in my scope over the past week, is the balance between feeling like North Bennett is this dreamy, magical place that gives you peace and it's this, little craft utopia, or what it actually is a place that people like yourselves have made a deliberate decision to come and work really hard. It's a place of work. It's like a place where you get stuff done and you work hard and you're deliberate about it and it's for a purpose. So I struggle with that language all the time.
Yeah. A term that I've heard used is best effort. Everybody there is putting forward their best effort to do these things. And when you have everyone doing that, it's hard. It's good peer pressure, I guess, I think, in that it's hard to not try your best in that kind of environment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Willow. Emery, your lasting moment of yours.
Kind of, well, what you just said, but also what Willow said of, I see it as both. It's kind of like the Hogwarts of trades, where you feel you're in this like magical North End. You're like, oh, it's like a different world, different country, but you're also there to learn things. And I think it brought me back to like my childhood in a good way. I think over the years, you kind of maybe take risks socially or doing things, but the things that like doing something, I feel like I would stick more with, okay, I know I'm good at this, or let me get better at something I'm already good at. Or if I don't think I'll be good at something, like, why even bother? Like, I don't want to deal with, failure or just not feeling competent. And going in, I knew it was going to not be comfortable all the time, because I did not have any experience. But that was like kind of what made it so great for me, is that like I couldn't, because everyone's working really hard, but it's not like cutthroat. Like a lot of my friends who went to art school, they're like, people would be just like these horrible things to each other just to try to tear everyone down. And here it's like I never felt unsafe. Like I would feel, and you would start something new. Like just when I would get the hang of something, I'm like, oh, I finally got this. And then it's like, all right, we're on to the next thing. And sometimes there'd be like frustration a little bit, like, oh man, like I want to do like one more day of this. But because you keep it moving, it keeps adding to what you know and helping with the way they lay out the curriculum, at least with carpentry, you just keep building. And yeah, I think just overall that lasting feeling of like being with people of all ages. I also just like made friends of all ages. I feel like the US is very ageist. Like everyone hangs out with their own groups, and friends and times I've lived in other countries is like, I don't know, everyone hangs out together a lot in places I've been. And it's like, I don't know, I just felt like I made a lot of friends of different ages and we all helped each other. And so
yeah,
just the experience of feeling safe to like work hard, not get in your own head.
That's cool. I like that. I mean, something you just said about a cutthroat environment. I mean, that's a lot of I think that because of North Bennett's diverse curriculum, each thing sort of tempers the other one in a different way. So, I mean, that's one of the poetic things about, and I'm going to botch how it was said, but how carpentry was placed next to the violin making program, and so on. That was with intention that they were placed next to each other. And
Sorry
I'm
about
not
the
being-
noise.
But it's because one complements the other in a certain way, and I think that goes for the whole school, and so it kind of keeps anything from being cutthroat, you know. Chris, how about you? What is a lasting memory of yours?
I would say my most lasting memory at North Bennett was probably the time our class spent at Brookwood Farms. Don't get me wrong, I loved coming into Boston and blowing my rent money on modern pastry, but Brookwood Farm, I mean, it's just this completely idyllic setting. I mean, it has it all, you know, hand-hewn barn from 300 years ago, modern timber frame, farm fields, a pole barn to work in on cold and rainy days. But yeah, I mean, we had a really fun class. You know, small class, only 11 or 12 folks, and I mean, just made a ton of really lasting memories there.
Mm-hmm.
Both in first year and second year. I mean, we had both instructors out there. Yeah, it was just an absolute blast to get to spend the time out there. You know, to see the overwhelming positivity, even through frustrating days. Like you said, there's a lot of days in carpentry where just nothing seems to go right. But you know, when you have everyone working towards the common goal, eventually it'll get done. And when you get to raise a timber frame that you worked on for, you know, 2 or 3 months, you really see everything come together. It's very satisfying. Very great feeling of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Nick, lasting memory.
I think definitely a lasting memory for me is from probably my first few weeks at school, when I realized that I was learning some brand new concepts about, I think for me specifically, like learning what was sharp and what was flat. Those two words specifically, of course, like, you know, everyone knows what is flat and what is sharp, but in the context of making something, of making an instrument, those words take on completely new meaning when you're trying to sharpen knives at North Bennett Street, as opposed to in your kitchen with the little rod thing. It was amazing to me. It was like seeing a new color for the first time. I didn't know that you could be that specific with how you did things, or that you could get a piece of wood that flat. And it had just never really occurred to me before that was, you know, that these options were even possible. And I remember learning those and seeing, you know, how Roman taught us to make things sharp and to make things flat, really was, you know, the building blocks for making an instrument. And it's like all of a sudden you can see the pathway of like, oh, this is how I'm going to put a violin together. It's not a mystery anymore. It's not just some nebulous idea of like, oh, you cut some wood out and you glue it together, you know, which is what I really, sorry, my lights just turned, which is, you know, that's kind of what I had a sense of. I didn't know anything about making an instrument before I went to violin school. I just didn't have a good concept of what that would even be like. And then those first couple of weeks learning those kinds of fundamental concepts that really form your like paradigm for how you do woodwork, that was really awesome to me. And then to come here at this job and those concepts are still fully intact, but they're amped up exponentially even higher, you know, and now I can look back at the things that I flattened, the wood that I, you know, joined North Bennett Street and say, wow, I can't believe I let that go. Now I can, you know, spend literally weeks, you know, shaving dust off a piece of wood to get a glue joint just perfect, you know, and and it's worth it, and it's very satisfying. But I never would have been able to do that without learning those things from home. So that's cool.
Thanks, Nick. Greta?
So I feel like I have many, but mostly because I was pretty involved with the school when I was there. I was a student worker, a lead student worker. I worked at the store for you, Kristen, and I also prepped materials for continuing education for the bookbinding class. But since I was so focused in conservation, I'll choose a memory from that relates to that. Definitely visiting with my class, the Weissman Preservation Center, the Harvard's Conservation Lab, Book Conservation Lab. That really just sort of like solidified in me that the kind of work I could be doing, because I had no idea what a conservator did day to day. I just knew basically like, their main responsibilities and sort of how they get there. But seeing it in person and also feeling that contrast of what North Bennett was giving me that I wouldn't get in the conservation field, which is bench train bookbinding. That's something that that helped me a lot to focus, because book conservators don't necessarily go through a bookbinding program, so they approach books in a kind of totally different way, than a bookbinder would. So I think like that contrast and like that hard difference was very memorable for me.
It cemented your decision.
Yeah, of just, not really like choosing one over the other, but just sort of like knowing what I want my everyday to be job-wise.
Yeah. Thank you. We're over the hour, so if anybody wants to, any of our guests want to give us any questions, just feel free to type them in the Q&A box. I have one, and whoever wants to answer this, jump at it. Is there something now that you're out of school practicing your craft that you wish NBSS would have offered you or taught you, something that would have prepared you for what you're encountering now? Is there a missing piece? Nobody wants to jump at that one?
I could jump at that.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute my mic. Go ahead. Sorry.
John, get it together.
I just think it's kind of straightforward for bookbinding, because, it's bookbinding. We don't learn conservation. We learn bookbinding and book repair, which is very, very useful. And it makes sense to be, focusing on one thing, because conservation, it's like just very intense in its own way. But I feel that maybe just sort of like, if I would have known what an art conservation portfolio looked like before I was on my last year applying to opportunities, I feel like I would have done better at presenting myself in that sense.
So sort of career development, creating a portfolio kind of falls into that category?
Yes. Well, the thing is that our conservation portfolios are kind of very specific, because there are 4 to 5 main conservation programs in the States, and they each require very different things. Some of them require similar things, but they ask a lot. So, it's not something that North Bennett should be doing, but I wish I would have been more prepared ahead of time to just have a stronger portfolio at the end.
John, did you want to throw something at that?
Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I think for me, it was a little different because I ran a business before, but I think maybe if there was more time spent on because, you go from a lot of the people that, well, not a lot, I'd say there are some, students there that are younger, but you go straight from high school to a furniture making career. And now you have to go talk to people, you have to present yourself, whether it's to people one of the recent ones I did was for a board of like the Shawmut Design and Construction. So it was pretty intimidating to be in front of all those people, but maybe if there was a little more focus on that, towards the end, like how you set yourself up for a business, if you're going to be an LLC, insurance, like things like that for the future, if someone's planning on being an entrepreneur. I know that you guys would have the business class. I didn't attend that, but I think that would be nice, and maybe a little bit more with cabinetry. But all those things just kind of come hand in hand as you start going through the program. But other than that, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Brian McGrath does do career workshops, but maybe maybe it's something that needs to be folded into your actual curriculum in some way. I don't know, but
yeah.
I think the course offerings at North Bennett are so diverse that it's almost impossible to group all of the types of businesses into one course offering. So to see that like more ingrained in the individual curriculums, and maybe have business professionals in their respective careers come in and talk to the class about about how to run a business, how to do, like Jonathan said, large scale presentations or contracts, accounting, that sort of thing would be really nice to see. And I know not everyone wants to be a small business owner or entrepreneur, but I think North Bennett does lend itself to a lot of that type of development. So.
Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Willow?
It's kind of along similar lines of what Jonathan and Chris were saying. Like I did attend like the alumni panels and such for the business courses, which was really helpful to kind of get a little bit more of an idea. I would say less so that I wish the NBSS had it kind of more on that, so much as we just don't have that much time, or at least for the Joy program. Like we are back to back to back projects, like 50 plus projects is a lot to try to get through in 2 years. I think, and also like what Chris was saying as well, is that it's very difficult to cater one kind of overall thing to several different programs, because each program has very specific needs in terms of the information we need. Because I know that in that alumni panel, some of the like piano tuners were talking about how, hey, like the payment system I use is really great. And, after that panel, our teacher was like, hey, just want to let you know that using Square for jewelers is really not great because of the amount of tax that we have to take out. And because of the percentage of money, because we work with such high value numbers, you're losing a huge amount of percentage. So things like that are very difficult to kind of make work for everybody. So perhaps more from people who had started businesses, if that was a thing, to kind of integrate that more into each program specifically, I think is perhaps something that I would have probably gained something from.
Thank you, Willow. I just have a couple more questions. One, I'm just going to stick this in your head for a second while I answer the other one. So one question is, I'm curious about your maker mentors. Is there somebody in your world that inspired your path to working with your hands? Do you have a maker mentor? And while you're thinking about that, I want to answer this other question from Martin Leroyce asking, Nick and Kristen, have you heard of any very non-traditional settings that graduates of the violin making program at North Bennett have worked? And I do have an answer for that personally. There's a graduate that from the violin making program from years back, studied at the old building, now does high scale, large scale, huge steel structures in restaurants. Like completely opposing forces, but he builds these massive steel structures like grill plates, rotating burners, huge steel staircases. It's fascinating. So there's one answer for you.
That's cool. I can say definitely that I didn't learn anything about steel burners at the violin program at North Bennett Street, but but I would say that the violin program did give, in addition to, you know, obviously learning how to make an instrument, the skills necessary to do that are pretty universally applicable over a like pretty wide array of areas, I would say. Everything from, you know, like I said, sharpening tools, the actual woodwork itself, as even, you know, as far as making varnishing an instrument, you know, there's a lot of chemistry involved, and there's a lot of different skills in that program that are necessary. I think that those could be applied in all kinds of careers, potentially, or hobbies even, outside of making instruments.
Thanks, Nick. Anybody want to shout out to their maker mentor in these last couple minutes?
Sure, I can do that. The potter that I worked for, Heen Bayless, he total nepotism, longtime family friend. But I came back from working in marketing in DC for a couple of years, and I hated it. I hate social media. I mean, I hate checking my email every day. So I was just burnt out. And I realized, like, yeah, my brain just runs too much, and I can't like stop unless I'm making something with my hands. And like him just like saying that one day, it just clicked for me. And I didn't know it was going to be carpentry, and I didn't change my career right away. But that was like the kind of a turning point in like a college counselor never asked like what makes you happy, or like what makes you like keeps you interested. They're like, what are you good at, or like what I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It
No,
was never
I
like
understand
what
you're
makes you
saying.
happy. And so yeah, that was for me like the person that made me realize like I need to do something where I make something. I don't know what I'll do to make money off of it, but I'm so much happier than, I don't know, being on my computer, even though I'm currently on my computer right now.
Sorry, Emery.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's not, that is what we're all used to as children is, you know, what are you good at? Go do that. You know, it takes us a long time and growth and self-growth, and those people that can spot it in us to say, oh, that's actually what keeps your gears ticking. You should do that.
Yeah. I didn't think I'd ever make furniture for a living. Not at all. Even though I was a carpentry, I think before I started when I signed up for the program, they asked for a portfolio. I was like, oh man, I had like built maybe 2 coffee tables, you know, and at that point, I really didn't know that much about the school. And then when I went out to the open house, I'm like, wow, this is too much for me. I didn't think I'd be able to do it. But I think Matt Wader would probably be my mentor for sure. I still talk to him all the time. I didn't really have a whole lot of mentors to lead me in this direction prior to being there, but definitely he's been a huge help, you know, during the school, during the program, and now even after I'm out, he's still a very big help. So yeah.
Thank you, Matt Wader.
Yeah, love you, Matt.
Anybody else?
I'll give a shout out to Jim Reed Cunningham. He's definitely been very supportive, and what I appreciate the most is his very honest feedback. That is sometimes pretty hard to find. You know, someone that cares enough to actually tell you something that might, you know, make you rethink your whole approach. But that's really what you needed to begin with, you know, that kind of that. So thank you, Jim, if you're watching.
I would really quickly also just mention my boss here, our shop foreman at Rare Violins, Tato Imaishi. He's he's a great guy, but I was specifically shouting him out also because he's also a North Bennett grad, and he was there before the current instructor Roman was, unfortunately. So we don't have that crossover connection, but I think he graduated in 1995, I want to say, but it's been super easy for me to be on this path because of him, and just seeing his influence and because basically he did the exact same thing that I did. He went to North Bennett, got a job in New York, and started and never left. And it's easy for me to follow that example for the time being. And as soon as I saw the kind of woodwork he was capable of, I was immediately just sold. So it's comforting to just be able to follow that example and learn from him.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you. We have gone beyond our hour, so I'm gonna just try to find Emery. First of all, where did she go? And just say thank you to everybody for joining us today. And in the spirit of this being the last public program of the year, and to thank all of our students for getting it through this year. And let's leave this year behind. I'm going to put my party hat on. And I just want to cheers everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Kristen.
Thank you all. Thanks for being here with us tonight.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Kristen.
And here's to a better year. It's been amazing, and you all are inspirations getting us through this crazy year. Just keep doing what you're doing, and we'll check in with you again. And thanks to our guests who joined us tonight, and whoever's going to watch this recording afterwards. Thank you.
Oh no,
and
this is recorded.
Yeah, it is. Have a good night, and cheers, everybody.
Yeah.
How about some
Happy
noise?
holidays.
Everyone.
What?
How about some noise?
Oh, let's
I
make
got
some
my
noise.
Kristen out.
Nice. All right, I'll see you all later. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, take care, Kristen.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.